Always have this motto. I always say the body heals with play, the mind heals with laughter, and the spirit heals with joy. And that
Welcome to Sacred Rebel Voices. My name is Jerry Zaire. My guest today is Ron Diamond, a magician, illusionist who has performed in over 22,000 shows through a 35-year career. So when did you realize that magic wasn't just entertainment, but that there was a healing that happened as you were performing?
Well, my wife always said, I always got into the technical sides. I got a point where I was doing the huge illusions and I was spending thousands of dollars on props and bigger and better. And then as time went on, my wife kept trying to convince me, listen, there's nothing wrong with that, but the power is not in those things. So he said, the power is people are interested in you as an entertainer. You don't have to do all of that be a good entertainer. And so I started backing down from that when I lost my partner and basically started doing smaller things and more rooted in storytelling and getting an audience on the comic side of magic, and began to realize that that was my calling, was to bring joy, laughter. And I always have this motto. I always say the body heals with play, the mind heals with laughter, and the spirit heals with joy. And that's been my lifelong mantra with what I do.
Well, I'm so impressed with that because I think, those are really spiritual principles in our life. And we are kind of, as adults, we lose that sense of play and sense of joy. And so talk about that a little bit. What was the moment when play maybe changed your own life?
A man named Tom Lester came to our school, and that's exactly what he talked about taking what you do and make it joyful, make it like every single day, remembering how you felt when you got the wonder in the play. And so you focus on that so you take it to others. But Tom was a guy that was an actor in a thing called Green Acres. Green Acres was a very popular TV show, and he played a part of a man named Ebb. And Tom really influenced me in that respect. It made an impact I never forgot.
Well, you say how play really heals the body as well. Um, how do you think play heals the body?
Well, I have yet to be. Let me put it to you this way. I can't tell you out of the thousands of shows I perform how many times I've had people come up to me, even days after they've watched, and said, especially really, really important things like they may have lost a husband, or a husband may have lost a wife, or something tragic has happened in your life. And I've had people come up and say, I didn't realize until I had watched and laughed and it came out of me during your presentation. And the answers were that it was okay to live again. It was okay to laugh again. It was okay to know that there's also going to be that grief, but you can get beyond just the grief. That's when I realized that play is very important, because it opens up that ability not to let the anxiety and the other negative things in your life just weigh you down. You've got to have I always tell my wife, who's had a hard time with that, you got to have hobbies. You got to have things that get beyond what you do for a living or the things going on in your life, that you can just get away from it for a minute. Even if it's a minute, it's healing to the mind and the soul.
In our society that kind of celebrates productivity, hard work, kind of push and never enough, do more, and there's almost like it takes that sense of joy out of people's lives, that sense of play, and we almost diminish it. Like, if you're playing, you're taking time off and just laughing and playing. You're not being serious enough about things. Do you find that too?
Yes, and one of the really toughest things I ever get asked to do is when I do seminars for like corporate events where you've got administrations and managers and people that they're so into what they do that when I try to get them in my show to be, because I do a lot of stuff with an audience that involves play. I get the audience playing, but it's amazing to watch how some people, it's so hard to let it go and to let that part of themselves out. Sometimes I spend half my show before I can get people to open up because they're so bound up by the lack of having done it. Because play is a practice. It's like any other thing. If you don't practice, it's hard to do. Sleight of hand, if you don't practice, it's hard to do. Play's the same way. You have to learn how to do it.
Yeah. And what do you think it is that about magic that people are drawn to when they come to your show? Uh, why are they coming, you think?
Well, I don't think it's the magic in and of itself. I think any good performance, it's the same reason people go to theater, they go to movies, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's good entertainment, it boils down to we have an innate desire to break away into something that gives us escape. It's escape. It's ability to not live the mundane because anything we do, if we do it with no other thing in our life, it becomes mundane and difficult. So that escape is like a breaking the chains of that. I like calling it to quit doing the dance. People start doing, if you do the same dance, I tell people in marriages, they go, people give up on their marriages so easy. I go, well, if you do the same dance, you're going to get bored and tired of doing the same dance. You want a different music and you want a different dance. So I tell people discovering play and living and making the decision to stay married is about changing the dance.
I love it. I love it. So have you ever failed spectacularly, and what did that teach you? Do you remember a time when you just really bombed, maybe when you're performing?
Oh, if you do 22,000 shows, there's a whole lot of that can happen because nobody's perfect. But half the time, there are stories that come up later that make you laugh because you learn from them. But I mean, I've had situations where where I've had trunks where me and a partner were supposed to switch, and unfortunately, the one that switched took the keys in the trunk with him, and the other one is locked in, and the keys aren't on the outside of the trunk. So it can get pretty embarrassing when you shut down a show and the partner's still inside the trunk, and things like that.
So what did you do in that situation?
I just basically said, "We're going to go get another set of keys." Now, and I know that isn't what had to happen, but I wasn't about to reveal the methods in front of an audience. So I basically went, he's going to have a snack in there for a while. You guys, we appreciate you coming, and I'm going to go get me another set of keys.
And so, there's something about as a performer, you have to learn how to be flexible, how to adjust, how to, compensate for those situations.
I always say the difference between an amateur and a pro, at least as far as magic and what I do is concerned, the amateur learns how to do the trick or the illusion with what he says. The pro learns what can happen to it when he's performing and comes up with many, many ways to try to go in a different direction should it happen. There's about 90% of all performance can be gotten out of if something goes wrong, because if you practice what could go wrong, and the audience doesn't know what's supposed to happen, so you play off of that. However, that 10%, that's the time, like with the trunk, that was that 10% that there was no way to compensate for what happened. But that 90%, the pros focus in on that so that when it happens, they have what we call an out.
Yeah, right. So, do you see magic as spiritual in any sense?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say in and of itself any more than any other profession is overtly spiritual. However, magic has intrigued me with its capabilities to focus me towards my own desire to discover more spirituality. So I don't get my spirituality from the actual magic, but the intrigue makes me want to study scripture and study the Bible and look at it from a different perspective spiritually.
Say more about that. How does that help you move into your own spirituality deeper?
Well, again, it's like habit. It's just when I first was doing it, and especially when I was in college and got out of college, uh, people would start asking me, especially with my wife being a pastor, but they would start asking me things about how magic and spirituality intersected or didn't intersect. So as a result of those questions, I got interested in looking at the Bible in a different way, not just specifically because of trying to learn about the magic part from scripture, but it gave me an interest in looking beyond just the magic itself, but the intriguing part of scripture. Now, my wife always says, boy, do you ask a lot of questions. And because everything I read in the scripture, I don't take I don't take it at face value. I go from the back side, the left side, the right side, and I ask questions, sometimes very hard questions that realizing I'm never going to get the total answer back because we look through a glass darkly, right? So it's like, the magic has made me ask the same question spiritually that I ask when I do magic.
Wow. And I agree with you, that I always say I don't take the Bible literally, I take it seriously.
Correct.
Because you can't take it literally. I mean, some people will say that they do that, but we know that you take it through your own lens, we interpret it. So, talk to me a little bit about magic and how that's evolved. How was it understood maybe in biblical days?
Sure.
And how have we changed in our understanding of it?
Well, here's what I always start with. Any conversation I get in a person, when it starts going from what I do into the spiritual side of things or faith-based things, I always use a statement that basically says this as we begin the conversation. I always say that my opinion is that Scripture warns against false spiritual authority. So what I do is I do not claim spiritual authority. What I do is an art, not power. It's an experience, not belief. When I can say that to someone, then the door becomes open for me to get into the other aspects of how scripture and magic intersect, coincide, and help us out.
Yeah, I think that's very very helpful. I think for people because we understand magic as entertainment. Somebody's a mentalist or somebody's an illusionist, and it doesn't have all that kind of superpowers. Which back in that day, because they just didn't understand a lot, and unfortunately, some people probably were burned at the stake for for being seen as magicians.
Well, I'll give you a little history. A lot of people don't know. I know you probably do, but a lot of people don't know about the history. Is that the idea of sleight of hand was one of the very first things that ever was invented in magic. It's the very first form of magic, and it dates back to about 5,000 years ago. That's how far back magic goes. Now, that was before recorded history, basically. But the first recorded instance of magic, we find scripturally, basically, uh, or well, actually, it was not the scriptures that were there. It was on the papyruses found during the Khufu's area in Egypt. And we also found the very first visual aspect of magic on an illusion we call the cuts and the balls. It's the very first recorded. We see this being performed on cave walls from Egyptian pyramids in the time of Khufu. And so it dates so far back, and a lot of people don't know that. And so when you start bringing it into scriptural aspects, it begins there. And the fact that it goes that far back when scripture starts coming into play and the Bible starts coming into play, now you sort of see these aspects of how the illusionary part of magic became part of scripture. And it even talks about some of the magicians that use these techniques in the Bible.
Well, as you made reference, your wife is a minister. And so you both have this kind of understanding of faith and play. And how does that intersect in your own lives?
Well, I always like to say, I try to practice what I preach. Now, I've never had a problem with that part of it because my wife always says, she uses this thing called the Enneagram, which kind of helps you talk to people on a level that they are personality wise. And I'm like what she calls an 8. And because I'm out there. I mean, I'll jump in with both feet into anything, and especially things I've never tried before. But and my wife, she finds those couple of things she likes and doesn't kind of move any outside of those boundaries. So I'm always challenging her to get out there and to discover newer things. But that's what I do. I jump in and try all kind. As long as it's legal, I'll do anything there is that's legal. Leave I always like to joke in the fair market. I'll say, "Yep, never done drugs, never done drugs my whole life." Then I'll say, "Well, okay, I did coke once, but the carbonation like to killed me, so I gave it up." So I basically have, as long as it's something that if I figure I might, if I don't try something that could hurt me, then I can't miss it. But short of that, I'll do anything for fun to try to see what's out there and to experience it.
I love your spirit, and there's something about you that just is joyful and playful, and I think that's part of what that we people love in other people. When you come into the room, you light up the room. People know that Ron's here, and you bring that kind of spirit to you, and of course, a lot of people aren't able to kind of let go of that, to unleash that within themselves. Why do you
Now,
think
here's the
that is?
key. Here's the key.
Yeah.
You just hit on it. We can't expect, because we all are different personality wise, discovering's one play, discovering what gets someone turned on by something they're trying to work towards or discover. We can't expect each other. I can't expect somebody to be interested in the same things at the same level of excitement that I am. They have to find their own level of excitement and those things that get them turned on to discovery that wrap around their own personality. That's, to me, the secret, is not trying to tackle things that are outside your personality boundaries. Because, if you're really a super introvert and you don't like being in front of people, then I would say that you're not going to be turned on by standing in front of an audience trying to entertain them. That's just one example, but to me, personality has to be completely involved in the things you choose to experiment and play with.
And when we think about, we talked about joy and laughter. One of the things that magic brings, I think, is sometimes that wonder. And how do you think wonder is a sacred piece of that for our life? How have you found wonder for yourself and that enhances your own being, your own person?
Well, scripturally, what's interesting is that if you really start looking at Jesus, magic is meant for an audience, it's meant for performance, and it's based on storytelling. The trick is done correctly is really just an advent to supporting the stories we tell. And if we watch how Jesus did, everything he didn't just simply tell people what to do. He didn't just tell the things about God. He used stories. He got in front of an audience, and everything was repeatable. He was able to use storytelling to generate interest. And because of that, the intersection of storytelling and performance in a way that helps people remember intensely what you're trying to get across to them is much more powerful. So I've always used the magic in my storytelling and the storytelling of scripture to help each other.
Well, and that makes me think about if you think if adults reclaimed play, how would that change our culture?
Oh man. Well, if you play, the wonderful thing about it is most of the time play involves being with other people when you do so. There's not many things we do playful wise that in and of itself is enjoyable without the experience of people enjoying it with you, or it being able to at least experience the joy of telling them about the joy you had from having played. So My wife and I, we go on vacation. We'd rather go with friends because sharing that experience with friends is so much more powerful than just, well, I wish we could tell people about this and make them feel what we feel. So to me, that's the secret is you got to be able to experience play around others. And what happens when that happens? It becomes infectious. And then when it becomes infectious, what does play turn into? Love. Love. How can we be a divided country? And I'm not going to get into politics, but as divided as we are, if people were playing together more, it develops into love more and incredible friendships. And then all of a sudden, that other stuff becomes less important.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's really true because as you play with one another, your relationships build, and then you realize, okay, your political point of view or this point of view, your religious point of view is secondary to the relationship. And that's what binds us. And that's why joy and laughter lighten us and help us live in that way.
Well, let me tell you before you go, I was going to say the reason I know that's true is because my wife and I have several friends that we travel with, we're involved with, and we're so totally opposite from each other on the political spectrum that the play we have together and the experience we have around, and we avoid those conversations because we know we're opposite. It would be like you wouldn't know any other way because when we're in that mode of play together and friendship together and love together, the other just doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was interested in when you're thinking about your performances in your career, was there a performance that really stands out to you that you'll never forget and why?
Well, I would say there's probably two, and one is on a more serious note. The other one is more funny. Okay. So I'll start with the funny one first. And these happen, I've had many, many of these over a 38-year career in the market. But the one that really stands out from a funny perspective is I was doing a comedy hypnosis show one time at one of the big fairs, and the 82nd Airborne was there, and they basically were allowed to just enjoy the fair for the day. Well, a whole bunch of the thing came to see my show, and I got about 15 of them up on stage in full uniform. Now, not the fancy ones, just their regular uniforms, and about 10 of them went under hypnosis, and, and they were doing some really really fun stuff. But what was funny about it is I gave them a suggestion that when they were on their bus heading back to the base, they were going to relive the show. So about 2 o'clock in the morning, the fair manager got a call from the commanding officer saying that he needed to speak to me because the guys were on the bus reenacting the show. And were they going to be okay? And of course, I had to talk them down, but it was, and I had to explain to them how it all worked but the point was that they were not out of control. They had had so much fun. I planted in their subconscious to think about how much fun they had and they could relive it. And they were just reliving it. That was the
Okay, good. Now, there was another one that you also that performance that you'll never forget, and share that one.
This one was a little more serious. So I had a lady at a fair I've been at for about 22 years now. About 3 years ago, she came up to me and she had said basically that her husband and her had over the years had come to almost every show I've done. They just kept coming. They enjoyed it a lot. Her husband loved to come and laugh and enjoy. But as the years went by and he started getting major health problems, she had come up to me and said that it was struggling. But the year before he had died, but it was shortly after the last fair he attended, and she just shared with me how important that was in their life and what I had meant after 18 years, what the show had meant to them and how much fun they had had with it. And basically, she tried to give me his wedding band as a gift, saying how much she appreciated of course, I didn't take it, but it hit me really, really hard, the impact that you can have on people. And because they want it, people so desperately need that time out. And she was so appreciative for that time out. She wanted to give me her husband's wedding band. which I took as a wow moment in my life.
Oh, that is very moving and powerful. And, really the joy that you've brought to people, the laughter, it's one of the best things, I think that someone could offer, because we do need those. And I know that's, what a great profession, because when you get done, you feel like, you've really, you've helped people lift up a little bit and have a little better sense of hope for their life.
Exactly right. I was going to tell you that when it comes to my uh, work, I've always tried to live my faith in when I'm on the road. I mean, people always say, "How can you stay married to the same person and be on the road sometimes up to 9 months out of the year for 38 years?" Well, the first of all, faith is my foundation. It allows me to, when I'm performing, to do a few things. One is it allows me to not go places I shouldn't be going, to not be with the opposite sex by myself without other people around. It gives me perspective on how to stay morally straight and upright. But best of all, because I try to live that without forcing it on people, it's amazing how many opportunities I get to share my faith with people that are watching my show, because there's something that they see that brings sparks more interest. But it gets me in the door without me trying to bang the door down to get in it. And that's what makes it really cool. Because I always say that wonder doesn't replace faith. It prepares the heart for it. That's my key. Wonder prepares the heart. If your heart's softened, and I can soften someone's heart, they're more open to faith because they're
And,
not
and
hardened.
and what does that mean for you to when you say I have faith? What is that? Talk about that a little bit about what that means to you.
Well, faith means that you don't just take absolutes and just live on it. For me, I don't take what I think I've learned and just take it for granted and just, okay, all right, I'm good. Let's move on. Faith to me is a daily event. It's when I read the word or read the Bible, it's taking those words and reading it each and every time and asking questions, which is what magic gave me. When I perform tricks, I can't look at it from just the front. I've got to look at it from every single angle to try to understand it. Does it mean I totally understand it? No. Scriptures, that's how I tackle. Faith to me is reading scripture and looking at it from the front, the back, sideways. Even if it's just one piece of a sentence, I'll ask 30 questions about that sentence. And then sometimes I go, Lord, is it all right that I ask those questions? Because sometimes they're very, very, very hard questions that it scares me to have even asked. But it comes up here because my use and my way I put magic together is that integrated as well. So I've used those techniques to integrate the Bible. So for me, faith is those constant questions I ask so that it remains fresh and always moving ahead. But it also has given me the perspective to allow people to have their own journey as well. They don't have to have mine. I have to respect theirs though.
Yeah. So as we kind of are coming to the end of this time, and I appreciate, you're really sharing so many of the aspects about your own life and your experiences and kind of um, understanding wonder and joy and laughter as a part of our life. What would you want somebody who's been listening to this conversation to take away from this that they might apply to their own life?
I would say above all is do not be afraid to try out your own perspective and to make your own discoveries and to jump in those areas that maybe you need to challenge yourself on, because as you challenge yourself, you're going to be amazed at what you'll discover and what it's going to do for you and how much it's going to make you uh, not only build better in your own faith, but it's going to also help you work towards better relationships with each other, because you can't jump in with both feet and make discoveries without others being involved and digging in and learning something you may never have known about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for this time together. And thank you, those who have been a part of this conversation. And I want to encourage you, if you like this conversation, please subscribe, because we have future interviews with people of all different aspects of artists, musicians, and politicians to explore what it means to be a sacred rebel. Thank you, Ron. And may we continue to find the magic in our life.
Thank you, Jerry. It's been wonderful. And I always